Hello, folks. For those of you who don't know, I spent 6 years as an intelligence analyst. I had one of the highest security clearances in the country. I work with the NSA and DARPA. I've been watching this unroll, this go on since the end of December, early January, because I have a compromised immune system and I have to take medication to hold off multiple sclerosis. So I've been watching this whole virus situation since way back, and I've had a lot of concerns. And now today I'm going to go ahead and do a video about it. I've been meaning to for a while. And here the idea is Trump a total moron, or is there something more sinister going on? I'm going to tell y'all what my opinion is at the end of this video. In the meantime, we're going to cover a couple of clips. I'm going to do a little commentary, and we'll go from there. We will start off with, when I was getting ready to do this video, I was taking down some notes, looking for some clips to use, and I came along this clip. It's about 10 minutes. It says the majority of what I was going to cover in this video, so I thought, why not let some other people, some news people, some respected, I think doctors and stuff here, talk about what I was going to say, because they might have a little more credential than me as far as these facts. So let's listen to what they have to say.
So let's show you how this all played out as the president undermined his top medical experts on stage. Once again, they're being forced to push back hard against President Trump's latest suggestions for treating the coronavirus, one of which included, stay with me here, injecting people with disinfectant. The president's ideas, which were rejected by experts in the briefing room with him, came after a Homeland Security official presented research that found disinfectants, heat and humidity killed the virus on surfaces and in the air.
Now, Trump knows that not too long ago, he mentioned that malaria medication, and people used that and died.
Very powerful light.
And then he goes and says this.
That hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. A lot of people have been talking about summer. Maybe this is one of the reasons. I once mentioned that maybe it does go away with heat and light, and people didn't like that statement very much. The fake news didn't like it at all, and I just threw it out as a suggestion. But it seems like that's the case.
It would be irresponsible for us to say that we feel that the summer is just going to totally kill the virus and that if it's a free-for-all and that people ignore those guides. That is not the case.
The president mentioned the idea of cleaners, like bleach and isopropyl alcohol you mentioned. There's no scenario that could be injected into a person, is there? I mean,
no, I'm here to talk about the findings that we had in the study. We don't do that within that lab, our labs. So.
I would like you to speak to the medical doctors to see if there's any way that you can apply light and heat to cure. You know, that if you could, and maybe you can, maybe you can't. Again, I say maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not a doctor, but I'm like a person that has a good, you know what.
But sir, you're the president.
Deborah, have you ever heard of that? The heat and the light relative to certain viruses, yes, but relative to this virus?
Not as a treatment. I mean, certainly fever is a good thing. When you have a fever, it helps your body respond. But not as, I've not seen heat or light.
I think it's a great thing to look at. I mean,
You can see these people struggling not to disagree with the president because he always fires everybody.
They want to get information and guidance and want to know what to do. They're not looking for rumors.
I'm the president and you're fake news. And you know what I'll say to you? I'll say very nicely, I know you well. I know you well.
And everyone that confronts him is, all the journalists that confront him are fake news.
Are you ready? Are you ready? It's just a suggestion from a brilliant lab by a very, very smart, perhaps brilliant man. He's talking about sun, he's talking about heat, and you see the numbers. So that's it. That's all I have. I'm just here to present talent. I'm here to present ideas because we want ideas to get rid of this thing. And if heat is good and if sunlight is good, that's a great thing as far as I'm concerned.
I guess if you could collapse the past 3.5 years of madness into one clip,
That would be it.
that might be the clip
That's
where
why Fox News or Sean Hannity went crazy on you last night. Probably couldn't even bring himself to start with that.
Well, he's been doing it for years. He's got this really
Obsession.
strange obsession, and I hope for his sake he gets past it.
But they had to fill time with something beyond that ridiculous claim by the president that he wasted everybody's time with. And you saw Dr. Birx. Ron Fournier had the greatest tweet, "Watch her soul slowly die."
I have nothing but respect
She was so disgusted with him.
Yeah, Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, they're hanging in there to try to save lives. But really, I knew growing up that with my children that if I would use scrubbing bubbles to clean the bathtub before
You don't eat them.
they got in there, but would not spray it in my children's mouth or in my own mouth if I had a fever or a disease. Like, this is so beyond madness that you have an American president saying such things about putting disinfectant in the body or putting light in the body. It is so beyond parody that if you wrote this for, let's say, Veep, nobody would believe it. And again, not funny because by probably the end of this month, more people will have died from this coronavirus that Donald Trump said was going to go away, said it was a hoax, that the media's coverage of it was a hoax. Sean Hannity said the media's coverage of it was a hoax. More people will be dead of this so-called hoax that the media was pushing, according to Sean Hannity and Donald Trump, than died in the Vietnam War over the next week. Will probably go beyond 57,000. And again, the fact that we're near the end of April, after losing trillions of dollars,
50,000 lives.
after more lives have been lost here than were lost in both Iraq wars, in the 20-year Afghanistan war, September 11th, the Revolutionary War, the War of... I could stack them up. Donald Trump is now at the point of talking about putting disinfectants in your body and putting lights inside people's bodies, to the embarrassment of those aides sitting on the sidelines listening to this horror show unfold before their eyes.
As we sit here and I listen to you lay it out, I cannot believe we're having this conversation. It's not only embarrassing and dangerous, but as you say, it's a monumental waste of time. A few hours before the president got up there, we learned that 4.5 million more Americans lost their jobs in the last week. More than 25 million just over the last month have lost their jobs. We don't have a national testing program. We don't have all the things that medical experts, public health officials say we have to get through this. And the president is talking about injecting disinfectants into Americans' bodies to cure coronavirus, somehow getting light inside their bodies. I was thinking about Dr. Birx as you guys played that. She spent her life fighting infectious diseases, leading the fight against HIV around the world, spending her life in these serious conversations. And she has to actually entertain the idea of the most powerful man in the world in front of all those TV cameras turning and saying, what do you think about this? And she has to say, well, it's not as a treatment. We can't treat people by injecting disinfectant and light into their bodies. She had to actually say that publicly. So let's see what doctors are saying about this. Another one, expert Dr. Vin Gupta, global health policy expert. We've had him on the show. He says this, quote, this notion of injecting or ingesting any type of cleansing product into the body is irresponsible and it is dangerous. It's a common method that people utilize when they want to kill themselves. That's a quote, John Heilman, from Dr. Vin Gupta, a leading public health expert and an emergency room doctor who's treating coronavirus patients himself. I don't really even have a question for you, John, but what are your thoughts about what you saw up there yesterday?
Well, I mean, you guys have hit the high notes or the low notes. I mean, it's beyond, you know, there's a kind of surreal quality to it, and it's not even an episode of Veep anymore. It really is. You have to be talking about cartoon parodies at this point. The Simpsons you guys played, I think, was right. But I mean, here's the serious thing that a very basic thing, right? You think about how completely divorced from reality the president is. I want to go back to the beginning of the week. We're sitting here on Friday. On Monday, the President of the United States stood up and said, as he was talking about the overall death toll from this pandemic, he said that, you know, it looks like when all is said and done, we're going to be probably at about 50,000, maybe 60,000 when all is said and done, when it's all over, 50, 60,000. That's what he said on Monday, right? We're sitting here right now, it's Friday, and we're at 50,000. The president apparently doesn't know even the basic reality of how many Americans have died. You could never have said on Monday, knowing that we were already in the 40s of thousands of deaths, that you thought that the total number of deaths from this pandemic would be 50, maybe 60. We're gonna pass the 50 threshold today, and we're gonna, you know, I mean, and short of a miracle, we're gonna pass the 60 threshold sometime, you know, next week. So the president's utterly divorced from all these realities, and then you get to the delusion. And I think, Willie, to your point, has been an ongoing question throughout since Donald Trump has started taking that podium for a couple of hours a day or 90 minutes a day. Now it's over a month that he's been doing it. People have raised questions. Joe Scarborough has raised this question many times in the course of the last few weeks, which is why do the networks take these ramblings of the president, these insane, misinformation-filled ramblings? Maybe there's some system that we should devise collectively as a news media to not to deny the president a podium entirely, but at least to not take them live, to look at them, have a chance to fact check them, to vet them. It seems to me that the argument for that is now triply strong, because we're now not just talking about giving him a platform to try to advance his political fortunes, but whether it's with hydroxychloroquine, and now with these notions of ingesting disinfectants, the president's misinformation is now actively endangering the lives of Americans who are watching him on television, Americans who follow the president's musings, who follow his instructions, who follow the things he's saying, are at risk of killing themselves. And so I think that genuinely we have to have a serious conversation about if the president's going to be saying things like this, not just lying, but lying in a way that could kill Americans. I think people have to really have a serious conversation about whether it is responsible to continue to allow to broadcast these things end to end when the president's on the podium live.
Thanks for checking out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. As far as, I mean, we just had these people that killed themselves because they listened to Trump, who said they think that that malaria medicine will help. So they went down to a pet store and got some malaria medicine, which, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but evidently it's different somehow. It's probably not as pure or whatever. Okay, so these people listened to him and then went down there and did that. How many people do you think we're going to hear about? We probably won't, because there's probably going to be a little squelching of any of this news that comes out. Hearing of people who are desperate that they have a child that's got the illness, and they don't have health insurance, and they can't go to they can't get them to the doctor for whatever reason, right? And they're going to be taking, and trying to make them drink, rubbing alcohol and stuff like that, because they think that might help because the president said so. The man needs to keep his mouth shut. He's really, I mean, he's either the stupidest man to walk the earth, because this is like the 1800s kind of medicine, like bloodletting and leeches. That's the way he's talking. Okay. I mean, everybody knows that you can't drink disinfectant, and the majority of people these days know that we have microbes and so forth in the body that are required for us to live. And if you were to drink, say you successfully drank alcohol, bleach, whatever, and it didn't kill you or cause damage to your body, and it only killed the viruses, the microbes in your body, you would die, because the microbes are required for you to digest food and get the nutrients from the food that we eat. You can't do that. There are other ways. I mean, garlic oil will do the same thing. It's a very potent antimicrobial. Coconut oil is also not as powerful, but it's a pretty good antimicrobial. You can use it to dress wounds and stuff like that. I mean, there are other ways to do it other than bleach and alcohol. All right, but you're not going to do that, because if you did that, you would make your body devoid of the microbes required for us to survive. Man, I tell you, I don't know. Now, here's the thing about Trump, okay? Leading up to what I'm going to say is my opinion at the end. What I think may be going on. It's more sinister than him just being a moron. I mean, he's either a moron, and we need to just keep him off camera. Just lock him in a room and leave him there until his term is over, and then get him the heck out of the White House. Or there's something else going on. So he repeatedly assured the public that the situation was under control, and that the federal government was improving, like testing and the ventilators and all of this, the PPE, all of this stuff. He kept. I mean, I'm sure y'all heard of it. You can find it. You can search it on YouTube. There's plenty of videos, plenty of sound bites of him talking about that stuff. And he's always trying to control the narrative, and even to the extent of firing experts. Do you know that malaria drug? He fired this recent guy who was in charge of the viral task force, whatever, the antivirus task force. The guy he just fired because he was trying to push him to use the malaria drug, and the doctor said no. And now they've come to find out, and I don't know if it was just before or just after he actually fired this guy, that malaria drug will actually increase the death toll, not decrease it. It's actually more dangerous. So let's go on to this other clip here.
We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control.
This is him trying to control the narrative and minimize everything.
Working with them very closely on the coronavirus. We're working with them very, very closely. We only have 5 people. Hopefully everything's going to be great. They have somewhat of a problem, but hopefully it's all going to be great. We pretty much shut it down, coming in from China. Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true. When you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
We'll just keep doing a good job. We're ordering a lot of supplies. We're ordering a lot of elements that, frankly, we wouldn't be ordering unless it was something like this. We are working on cures, and we're getting some very good results. In the early stages of the foreign outbreak, I ordered sweeping travel restrictions to prevent uncontrolled spread of this disease. I took a lot of heat, and that decision has been now given very good grades, like an A+++.
I think the 3.4% is really a false number. Now, this is just my hunch. So if, we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around and even going to work, some of them go to work, but they get better.
The Obama administration made a decision on testing that turned out to be very detrimental to what we're doing, and we undid that decision a few days ago.
And undoing this decision is actually what made things more complicated.
Yesterday, anybody that needs a test, that's the important thing, and the tests are all perfect. like the letter was perfect. The transcription was perfect, right? This was not as perfect as that, but pretty good.
I want to ask.
We're doing a great job with it, and it will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. We want to protect our shipping industry, our cruise industry, cruise ships. We want to protect our airline industry, very important. But everybody has to be vigilant and has to be careful. But be calm. It's really working out, and a lot of good things are going to happen. I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. But I've always known this is a pandemic. I felt it was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic. All you had to do is look at other countries.
Keep calling this the Chinese virus. There are
7,000 infected at this point.
bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. As we did with Canada, we're also working with Mexico to implement new rules at our ports of entry to suspend non-essential travel. And I agree with the doctor, what he said. May work, may not work. I feel good about it. That's all it is, just a feeling.
What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
Vote expected.
Romney's in isolation?
Yes.
Gee, that's too bad. New York Governor Cuomo.
Now you see that Mitt Romney's in isolation and he reacts like that's too bad. The man could die.
For a pandemic.
Right?
You'll notice
I mean, theoretically.
I think this is the part that we really need to take personal responsibility for. Saturday, I had a little low-grade fever.
Now, that's interesting, isn't it? He says, uh-oh, and walks away, right? He makes a joke out of it, but, you know, was he really being serious? He didn't want to be near her since she had a fever. She's a doctor, right? Anyway, so let's move on to this next one. Let me check my notes here. I had to make notes because I did one video and I just could not keep it coherent. Now, here's an interesting point. Now, Trump never did a whole national lockdown, right? He refused to do it. But he sends a Surgeon General out on April 1st to say that for 30 days, everyone should stay in their homes. Basically, it's an unofficial stay-at-home, national stay-at-home order from the Surgeon General of the United States. And he did this on April 1st. There were over 4,000 infected. Projected to hit. Now, this is Trump said that he knew that there were projections were 100,000 deaths before it was over. There were a little over 4,000 deaths in it on April 1st. They were projected to hit 100,000. Okay. Then 2 weeks ago, which was what is that? A week, maybe a week later, Trump's advisors called for a national stay-at-home order. Over 30,000 deaths at this point. Okay. Now remember, they doubled them at one point because they realized that there was a whole lot of people that had died from coronavirus that they weren't counting before because they hadn't tested. Part of the reason that Trump, back in the beginning was saying, we only have 5 infected. There was no real testing going on. The numbers started increasing dramatically when we actually started testing people. So the death toll went up substantially. It doubled when they realized that a lot of people that had died actually had died from the coronavirus, but they weren't counting them. Then 2 weeks ago, Trump's advisors called for a national stay-at-home order. 30,000 plus deaths. A week ago, less than a week after his advisors said we really need to do a national stay-at-home order, which Trump didn't do. Trump refuses to help states with testing and ventilators. Trump, where is it? Did I put it in here? That's when, and then Trump starts with the whole tweeting of free this state, free that state. Now all of a sudden he goes, now This whole national April 1st to about the middle of April, that's a 2-week period. The Surgeon General says everyone needs to stay at home, and then Trump starts saying we need to open stuff up and starts inciting people to go out and protest the state capitals and stuff to let them go back to work. Okay? Now let's watch this next video.
The truth is, we didn't have proper testing available in March, despite his repeatedly claiming that we did. And even now, we do not have adequate tests, masks, PPE, and necessary equipment, which creates unnecessary death and suffering.
The president is also pointing the finger at the World Health Organization and China, despite his past praise of the WHO. Not to mention all of the times he touted his close relationship with Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
We're in very constant communication, President Xi and myself, very, very constant.
Now, there appears to be some recognition among some on the president's political team that these political attacks in the middle of a pandemic are troublesome and have the potential to backfire, as one Trump advisor.
Actually, I think it was just the Pelosi part. I'll play that again because the volume was quite low, so y'all can catch this. Watch, I'm gonna play an ad again, right? See if they're gonna give me an ad or not.
Hi there, I'm Sophie Howard and I'm at a trade show in Germany looking for products that I can sell on my Amazon business.
There we go.
Lawmakers have gone home too.
Okay, this is Nancy Pelosi again, talking about when Trump was saying, we're doing a lot of testing, we got equipment coming and all that stuff. This is what her response to that, what she's talking about.
The truth is, we didn't have proper testing available in March, despite his repeatedly claiming that we did. And even now, we do not have adequate tests, masks, PPE, and necessary equipment, which creates unnecessary death and suffering.
The president is also pointing.
So the whole time he was lying to the public, saying everyone who wants a test can get one, that there's testing going on, we're on top of this. He had done nothing. And this is into March now. Into March. He had done nothing. Okay. Let me pull up my notes, see where I'm at here. Yeah, Trump incites protests against stay-at-home. Trump has refused to help the states with testing and ventilators. I think he did something with the ventilator. He refused, and he I guess got a company to. I don't even know where the state of the ventilators is right now. All I know is that they still needed some. Trump's actions to date strike me more as somebody trying to make things worse, not better. Okay, let's move on to this next video, and then I'll wrap it up. This is basically a rundown of everything he said, then, contradicting himself.
We're prepared, and we're doing a great job with it, and it will go away. Just stay calm, and we'll go away. I want every American to be prepared for the hard days that lie ahead. We're going to go through a very tough...
Now, mind you, he said this on March 31st. 2 weeks later, he was telling everybody that they should go back to the movies, they should go back to the restaurants.
2 weeks. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. It's absolutely critical for the American people to follow the guidelines for the next 30 days. It's a matter of life and death, frankly. It's a matter of life and death.
And yet 2 weeks later, he's tweeting, free this state, free that state, and inciting protesters to try and force the governors to raise the stay-at-home order.
With the flu, on average, we lose from 26,000 to 78,000 people a year, even more than that in some cases, some years. We haven't lost anybody yet.
If we can hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000, it's a horrible number. Maybe even less, but to 100,000. So we have between 100 and 200,000. We all together have done a very good job. But the Democrat policy of open borders is a direct threat to the health and well-being of all Americans. Now you see it with the corona. You see it.
Isn't that ironic?
We must put politics aside, stop the partisanship, and unify together as one nation and one family. Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, you know, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, but they think August, could be July, could be longer than that.
We're considering a national emergency declaration that would allow states and local governments to cap the amount.
I don't think you'll need that because I really think we're in, you know, extremely good shape. Today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words. When you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done. I've been watching them bring in trailer trucks, freezer trucks. They're freezer trucks because they can't handle the bodies. There's so many of them. We have done an incredible job. We're going to continue. It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. People were saying, well, let's just ride it out. This is not to be ridden out, because then you would have been looking at potentially 2.2 million people or more. 2.2 million people in a relatively short period of time.
The CDC said yesterday that they believe it's inevitable that the virus will spread in the United States, and it's not a question of if, but when. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I don't think it's inevitable. It probably will. It possibly will. The modeling estimates that the peak in death rate is likely to hit in 2 weeks. So, I'll say it again. The peak, the highest point of death rates, remember this, is likely to hit in 2 weeks. We'll have tremendous rallies.
So, yeah, that's enough for that one. So, he said, now the peak, once the peak hit the 2 weeks later, that's when he started with the whole tweeting, free this state and free that state. He started basically having the federal government back off. We're not helping states anymore. We're not going to help you with testing. We're not going to do this or that. Okay, so now you could assume either he's an idiot and he thinks, okay, we're at the 2 week mark. You know, now we can start opening things back up, which is what he's been talking about, right? But the death rate hasn't stopped yet. What is the flip side of that is, well, the death rate's starting to go down. If people go back out there, it should go back up again, right? That's my theory. That I wrote a bunch of screenplays a while ago. A couple of them almost got produced. And I was thinking about, for the last, say, 10 years, I've been throwing around this thought that I should sit down and write another screenplay about population control. Now, we know there's these theories that there's Illuminati out there. I don't know how true that is. I think that the people who are rich and powerful do control everything that goes on, whether it's by committee or not. I don't know. I think it's just the way it is. I mean, if people are powerful, they get things done the way that they want, right? I mean, Trump's a perfect example. Look at the medical professionals, all those people that stand there in that room with him who are afraid to contradict him in front of the press, right? Because that's the way it works. That's the way the world works. So whether it's a concerted effort or not, I think that they talk to each other. Some things they probably agree on and follow through with, and some things they do unilaterally. But I believe that if this wasn't done intentionally, and there's some theory that maybe it was, that this was this virus was created in the lab and intentionally let loose, that if that wasn't the case, that I think at this point the powers that be have decided, well, why don't we drag our feet a little bit and see what happens, see if we can cull the herd a little bit. I think it's quite possible, would not surprise me in the least. Because either Trump is a complete moron or he has an ulterior motive for why he's acting this way. And he could be a complete, I don't know, what is the word, sociopath, where he doesn't really care who dies and he only cares about his political career, which is going down the tubes. He's got to know that. All of the way he's been acting, there's no way people are going to vote for him. Even as stupid as most of the Republicans I've seen who back him unconditionally seem to be, I don't think that he's going to get away with it this time. I think that he's done. So I don't really think it's a political thing. He might be trying to bolster his rich buddies in business, perhaps. You know, that could be. But to me, everything he's doing, he has almost, since the very beginning, it's like everything he has done has been to cause more of a problem. He's been part of the problem, not the solution, the entire time. Now he sits there and says, no, I was part of the solution. No, we all know, we watch it, we can see it on the news every day. He's not. He's part of the problem, not the solution. So I think that there could be an ulterior motive. Let me read my notes here, see if I covered everything I wanted to in the notes before I go on to my final. Oh, there's another possibility. If the stay-at-home orders are rescinded, there is no more responsibility for unemployment or stimulus, which means that the federal government now doesn't have to worry about putting any more money in the hands of the lesser classes of people. So, and what happens with that federal money? Usually the federal money goes into buying things from huge companies, contracts, that kind of thing. Well, I'm sure that those companies are now getting a little concerned because of all of this money that's being given to the regular people, right? So it's possible maybe that is, I'm sure that is at least part of the motivation. I'm sure of that. How much of the entire ulterior motive that motivation is responsible for, I don't know. It could be the majority of it, or it could be just a part of it. Like I said, would not surprise me to find out that they said, poor people, they take a toll on federal programs. If we lose a few, that's just going to lighten the load a little bit, right? Now, the rich people like Trump and them, they in general, that their risk is very small as far as this virus. If we get a resurgence of the virus, their risk is very small. I mean, some of them are going to get a look at the guy in London. Of course, I think he visited a hospital or something, and that's how he got it. But their risk is still very small. They're surrounded by people who I'm sure they make get tested, and so they're fairly certain that they're okay, that their environment is sanitary, that they don't have to worry about it. But the poor people who have to go to Walmart to get their food, their groceries, their this, their that that are out pumping their own gas instead of having somebody else do it, they're a lot more at risk for contracting this thing if there's a resurgence. And there's a percentage of those people, I think it's 20%, I think is what it is, are going to die, right? So if there's a resurgence, people like Trump aren't worried about it. So it's quite possible that the rich people have had a little discussion and decided, hey, you know what? If we have a resurgence and some more of the poor people die, it's not that big of a problem because it's going to lighten the load on the federal programs. Let's see. Poor put more from financial burden. The death toll is likely to be highest on the poor because they can't afford as good a health care. They're in much more environments that are more conducive to, spreading disease. And the fewer poor mean more federal money for big business and the rich people. So that's my opinion. Could this be something as sinister as what I just said a minute ago? EMS sometimes make it harder for me to remember stuff. Could this be as something as sinister as population control? I would not be surprised, to be honest with you. It kind of looks, he's more of a problem than anything else. The man needs to be, they need to keep him off camera for sure. I mean, he's even going on camera and recommending things that some people might be desperate enough to try and end up killing themselves, their kids, their family, whatever, without meaning to, by trying to save them because of what he's saying. So, and I just find it hard to believe that that escapes him. So I don't know. You decide, but I had to put it out there. So y'all take it easy.